The deepest pain often comes not from enemies, but from the ones you once called home. I always believed that if the world turned its back on me, my mother never would. I believed it with the stubborn confidence that only children can have, unshaken, unquestioned, complete. She was my world, my safe place, my everything. It was just the two of us for as long as I could remember. My father left when I was 2. I have no memory of him, just an old photograph folded inside the back of a drawer. My mother never talked about him, and I never asked. Maybe because I didn't need to. Maybe because the way she looked at me, like I was her purpose, made me feel like I wasn't missing anything at all. Our little apartment was far from luxurious. A leaking tap in the kitchen, cracked tiles in the bathroom, and second-hand furniture that made weird sounds when you sat down too fast. But it was home. It was warm. Not because of the heater, but because of the way she filled it with life. Her laugh, her scent, her voice humming old Hindi songs while she chopped onions in the evening. She worked long hours at a nursing home, came home with tired feet and aching shoulders, but still tucked me in every single night without fail. "It's you and me, sweetheart." "Always," she'd whisper after kissing my forehead. It was our ritual. A small phrase, but it felt like a shield around my life. Like nothing could go too wrong because she was there, and I was there, and we had each other. But nothing stays untouched forever. It started with small changes. She began dressing up more, wearing lipstick she hadn't touched in years, taking longer to get ready for meetings and evening walks. I was 16, old enough to notice when something was different, but young enough to not know what to do about it. "Where are you going?" I asked one night when she grabbed her purse and dabbed perfume behind her ears. "Just catching up with an old friend," she said with a smile I didn't recognize. It wasn't a lie exactly, but it wasn't the truth either. I felt it in my bones. And then came the name, Mark. She started saying it often. "Mark said this, Mark likes that, Mark thinks we should try that restaurant." It annoyed me in ways I couldn't explain. Not because he existed, but because of how much space he was suddenly taking up in the world that had always belonged to just the two of us. The first time I met him, he brought flowers. Not for me, for her. He tried to shake my hand and made a joke about my serious face. I didn't laugh. Something about him felt off. He smiled too wide, talked too loud, asked me questions like he was reading from a manual on how to bond with teenagers. My answers were short. I didn't want to give him more than I had to. Still, he kept coming back. First once a week, then 3 times. Then suddenly, he was there every evening, watching TV on our couch, eating food she used to cook just for me. One night I came home from school and he was in the kitchen, stirring a pot like he owned the place. My mother stood next to him, laughing at something he said, her hand brushing his arm. They looked like a team, a unit. Like I was the extra piece. That night, she didn't come into my room to say goodnight. I stared at the ceiling, waiting for the sound of her slippers, for the soft creak of the door, for that whisper, "It's you and me, sweetheart." always. But it never came. Something inside me started to tighten. I wanted to talk to her, to tell her I felt like I was slowly being erased from her life. But I didn't know how to say it without sounding selfish. After all, didn't she deserve to be happy? Didn't she have the right to love someone? But why did her happiness feel like my loneliness? It got worse when he moved in. She didn't even ask me. One day she just said, "Mark's going to be staying here more often now." I wanted to scream, to tell her this was our home, not his. But instead, I just nodded. My voice didn't come. My courage was nowhere to be found. Mark brought new rules. No phone at the dinner table. Finish your chores before watching TV. Talk to your mother with more respect. He wasn't rude about it. In fact, he always kept a polite tone. But there was something about the way he said things, as if he was marking his territory. As if he was taming something. One afternoon, I heard them arguing. "She's being difficult," Mark said. "She ignores me. Disrespects me. She's just adjusting," my mother replied, her voice shaky. "She's been through a lot. You need to stop making excuses for her. She's too attached. It's not normal." I held my breath. And then I heard my mother say the words that shattered everything, "Maybe you're right." I don't remember what I did next. Maybe I just sat there on the floor, numb. Maybe I cried. I honestly don't know. All I remember is the feeling, that cold, empty feeling you get when you realize the one person you trusted most no longer has your back. That night, I didn't come home for dinner. I walked around for hours, watching other families through their windows, mothers helping kids with homework, dads telling silly stories, lights glowing warm on dinner tables. And I wondered what it would feel like to belong again. To be seen. When I finally returned home, Mark was on the couch. My mother looked at me but didn't ask where I had been. Didn't hug me. Didn't even look worried. I went to my room and cried into my pillow. Days passed. Then weeks. My mother began calling Mark babe in front of me. She laughed louder at his jokes. They planned a weekend getaway together and left me with a frozen pizza and a note on the fridge. I started sleeping with headphones on just to drown out the sound of their laughter at night. One evening, after a particularly awful day at school, I came home to find that Mark had rearranged the living room. The couch had moved. Our photo, just me and my mother at the beach when I was 10, was taken off the wall and replaced with a picture of them together at some resort. I stood there staring at the empty space where that photo used to hang. My chest tightened. That photo wasn't just an image, it was a memory. It was proof that once I mattered. I walked into the kitchen and held it in as long as I could. But then I asked, "Why did you take it down?" She looked surprised. "What?" "The photo of us." She glanced toward the wall, then back at me. "We're just updating the place. You still have the original, right?" I nodded, even though I didn't. And that's when I realized she didn't see it the way I did. To her, it was just decoration. To me, it was everything. That night, I packed a small bag, my notebooks, a few clothes, my phone charger. I stood at the doorway of her room. "Where are you going?" she asked, alarmed. "To Aunt Mira's." "Why?" "Because I don't belong here anymore." She opened her mouth to say something but said nothing. Just stood there, silent, frozen. I turned and walked away, hoping, just hoping, that she would stop me. She didn't. The cold night air bit into my skin as I stepped out of the apartment. I walked slowly, dragging my small bag behind me like it carried all the weight I couldn't put into words. I didn't take a taxi. I didn't call my aunt right away. I just walked. Past empty shops. Past the park where my mother once pushed me on swings when I was small. Past the cafe where we used to share ice cream every Sunday. Places that once held joy now felt like echoes of a life I no longer had. When I finally arrived at Aunt Mira's house, I stood outside for a long time before knocking. The porch light flickered, and for a moment I almost turned back. But I didn't. I knocked. She opened the door in her nightgown, confusion all over her face. "Sweetheart? What are you doing here?" I needed somewhere to stay." She didn't ask anything more. Just opened her arms. I didn't cry then. I didn't say much. I just let her hold me for a minute longer than I should have needed, and she let me come in. The couch became my new bed. It wasn't comfortable, but it was mine. No one moved my things. No one told me how to sit or speak. It was quiet, and that was enough. My aunt gave me space. She didn't probe. She cooked for me like I was her own, but let me eat in silence when I wanted to. Sometimes I saw questions in her eyes, but she never forced them into words. I was grateful for that. Days turned to weeks. I got used to brushing my teeth in a new bathroom, folding my blankets every morning, waking up to a different rhythm. I told people at school that I was just staying with my aunt for a while. No one asked why. Or if they did, I shrugged it off like it wasn't a big deal. But it was. The hardest part wasn't what happened. It was what didn't happen. My mother didn't call. Not once. Not a single message to check if I was okay. Not even a short text saying goodnight. I kept waiting. One night, I broke. It was around 2 a.m. Everyone was asleep. The street outside was quiet except for the occasional bark of a stray dog. I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the fridge and scrolled through our old photos, me on her lap, me asleep in her arms, her smiling down at me with that look that said I was her whole world. I texted her. "Do you miss me?" I stared at the screen. The typing dots never appeared. The message just sat there, unread. Hours passed. Morning came. Still nothing. That was the moment something shifted in me. I stopped checking my phone. I stopped imagining scenarios where she came running, crying, saying she'd made a mistake. I stopped rehearsing speeches in my head about how we could fix this. Instead, I started building a life. My grades had slipped during the last few months at home, but at my aunt's, I slowly pulled myself back together. I studied late into the night. I applied for a part-time job at the bookstore down the street. I found small joys in routine, making tea in the morning, folding laundry with my aunt, listening to old music on the radio. My aunt became my anchor. She wasn't dramatic or overly affectionate, but she showed up. Every day. In small ways. She bought my favorite cereal. She made me a scarf when it got cold. She left notes with smiley faces on my notebooks. And somehow, without trying, she gave me something I hadn't felt in months: stability. Months passed before I saw my mother again. It was at a wedding. A cousin on my father's side, someone we both knew but hadn't spoken to in years. I didn't want to go, but my aunt encouraged me gently. You can face her. You're stronger now. When I arrived, she was already there, standing beside Mark, laughing with a glass of wine in her hand. Her hair was pinned up in a way I'd never seen before. She looked unfamiliar. She didn't notice me at first. But then our eyes met. Her smile faltered. She took a step toward me, then paused. Mark whispered something in her ear, and she nodded slightly. Then she walked over. Hi, she said, her voice soft. Hi. You look older. I almost laughed. That's what time does. She looked down at her shoes, then back up. I've been meaning to call. I didn't answer. She looked past me, toward my aunt across the hall. You're doing okay? I'm doing fine. That's good, she said, but her voice wavered. I just wanted you to be happy. Were you happy when you asked me to leave? I didn't say it with anger. Just exhaustion. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. I didn't know what else to do. Mark thought, yeah, I interrupted, Mark thought. She opened her mouth to say more, but then closed it again. I waited. But the words didn't come. I should get back, I said. She nodded, stepping aside. That night, I didn't cry. Not even once. I thought I would. I thought seeing her would reopen everything I'd worked so hard to heal. But it didn't. Instead, it confirmed something I hadn't dared to believe until then. I had outgrown her. It sounds harsh, but it's the truth. I had spent so long needing her, aching for her, defining myself by her absence, that I didn't realize I had become someone she no longer recognized. And maybe that was okay. I didn't hate her. I didn't even wish her pain. I just let go. I returned home from the wedding, took a hot shower, and sat on the balcony with a blanket around my shoulders. I looked up at the stars and whispered, I forgive you. I didn't say it for her. I said it for me. So I could sleep. So I could breathe. So I could finally be free. Life after that wedding felt quieter. Not emptier, just quieter. Like something had shifted permanently inside me. I wasn't carrying the weight of hope anymore. the kind that made every phone buzz feel like a potential apology, or every holiday feel like a chance for reconnection. I had stopped waiting. And in that silence, I found a strange kind of peace. Acceptance letters came in. I chose one in a small city 3 hours away, far enough to breathe, close enough that I could return if I ever wanted to. When I left for college, my aunt drove me there. We packed my things into her little car, sang along to old songs on the highway, and laughed more than we had in months. She didn't cry when she dropped me off. She just hugged me tight and said, "Build your own world. And let it be full of light." I carried those words with me. College wasn't easy at first. I had to learn how to share space again, dorm rooms, study lounges, laundry machines that never worked when I needed them. But it was also the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere new. I joined a writing club, took long walks around campus at night, made friends who didn't know anything about my past and didn't ask. And somewhere in the middle of essays, cheap coffee, and endless library nights, I started writing my story. Not just in journals, but in essays, poetry, short stories. I didn't always mention my mother directly, but she was there. Her absence, her silence, her choices, all of it flowed into my words like ink that wouldn't dry. One professor pulled me aside after reading a piece I wrote about a ghost who lives in a house she no longer visits. "This is heartbreak in disguise," she said. "Have you considered submitting it to the university anthology?" I nodded, even though I wasn't sure if I was ready to let anyone else read something so personal. But I submitted it anyway. And when it got published, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: pride. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving my pain. I was transforming it. Months turned into semesters. My world expanded. I met people who taught me that family doesn't have to be blood. It can be built, moment by moment, in quiet dorm rooms, late night calls, and shared vulnerability. One friend, Leo, became like a brother to me. He had a complicated relationship with his father, and somehow our broken edges matched perfectly. We didn't talk about our families often, but when we did, we spoke in the language of understanding, not pity. One night, we sat on the rooftop of our dorm, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. "Do you think they ever regret it?" he asked suddenly. "Who?" "Our parents. The ones who let us go." I thought about it. About my mother's eyes at the wedding. About the silence that had stretched between us like a canyon no one wanted to cross. I think maybe they do, but not in the way we hope. Leo nodded. "Yeah, not enough to come find us." And somehow that made sense. Regret isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet echo that stays locked inside people too afraid to speak. It had been over 2 years since I left home. I hadn't spoken to her more than a few brief texts. Each holiday, I wondered if she would call. She didn't. Each birthday, I waited until midnight, just in case. She never messaged first. And slowly, even those expectations faded. Not because I was stronger, but because I had stopped expecting a version of her that didn't exist anymore. Then, during my final semester, I received a message. It was short. Just one line. Can we talk? The contact name said Mom, but it felt like a stranger had typed it. I stared at it for a long time. My fingers hovered above the screen. I typed sure and deleted it. Then why now, and deleted that too. I closed the message and went for a walk around campus, heart pounding. When I returned to my dorm, I still hadn't replied. I didn't know what scared me more, that she would say something or that she wouldn't say anything meaningful at all. 2 days later, I replied, I'm free Sunday evening. Call if you want. Sunday came. I sat by the window, watching the sky turn pink and then gray. The call came at 6:03 p.m. I answered. There was silence. Then her voice, hi. Hi. She cleared her throat. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I didn't say anything. I know I wasn't there for you. I made choices. Some were wrong. Maybe all of them were. Still, I stayed quiet. I just want to say I'm sorry. I should have fought harder for us. I swallowed. Why are you saying this now? She hesitated. Because I miss you. Because I realize I lost something I can't replace. Those words should have meant something. A part of me had dreamt of them. But they didn't land the way I expected. They didn't bring closure. They didn't open wounds either. They just floated there. I've built a life, I said softly. I know, she whispered. And I'm proud of you. Even from far away. Mark? I asked. We're not together anymore. I exhaled slowly. I'm not calling to ask you to come back, she said. I just wanted to say what I should have said a long time ago. There was another long pause. Then she said, maybe someday we can have coffee. Or lunch. If you'd like. I'll think about it. That's fair. Take care of yourself, I added, and meant it. You too, sweetheart. The call ended. I sat there for a long time. Not crying. Not overwhelmed. Just still. Maybe it wasn't a full reconciliation. Maybe it never would be. But it was something. A thread. Fragile, thin, but real. And sometimes that's enough. After that call, life didn't suddenly shift into some fairy tale where everything made sense. There was no magical reunion, no tearful embrace at a train station. My mother didn't come rushing in with open arms, and I didn't run toward her like a child who'd been lost in the woods. What happened instead was quieter. Slower. And maybe, in a way, more honest. A few weeks after the call, she messaged again. This time with something simple. I'm going to be near your campus next Saturday. If you'd like, I'll be at the coffee shop across the bookstore at 3. She didn't ask for a reply. She didn't beg. She just left the door slightly open. I stared at that message for 3 days before deciding. When Saturday came, I arrived 10 minutes early. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and burned espresso. Students sat hunched over laptops, whispering about deadlines. I picked a corner table near the window, ordered tea, and waited. She walked in at exactly 3:04 p.m. She looked smaller somehow. Not older, just softer. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on me, and for a second, we both froze. Then she walked over and sat down. No hug. No awkward handshake. Just two people sharing a table that once belonged to something more. "Hi," she said. "Hi." We sat in silence for a minute. I noticed how her hands trembled slightly as she stirred her coffee. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said. "I wasn't sure either. I didn't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to see you. See how you're doing." "I'm doing okay." She nodded. "I can tell." Another pause. "I read your story in the university journal," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "The one about the house and the ghost." My chest tightened. I knew it was about us. You and me. I sipped my tea slowly, trying to stay steady. It was about a lot of things. But yeah, mostly that. "It broke my heart," she said. "But also, I was proud. You turned all that pain into something beautiful." I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't the same woman I remembered from childhood. There were more lines near her eyes. Her lipstick was uneven. She didn't wear the shiny, perfect smile I'd come to associate with Mark. She looked raw. Human. "I'm not angry anymore," I said quietly. She looked up, eyes glistening. "That means everything. I don't know what we're supposed to be now. I can't go back. I'm not the same." "I know," she said. "I'm not asking for that." We sat there, sipping warm drinks, letting the spaces between our words hold us gently. She told me about her life, how things with Mark had unraveled, how loneliness had crept in once the noise was gone. How, for a long time, she believed she had done what was best, only to wake up one day realizing she'd pushed away the one person who truly saw her. "I was scared," she admitted. "Scared of being alone, scared of not being chosen. And somehow, in choosing him, I unchose you." I looked down at my cup. Her words hit differently. They didn't excuse anything, but they explained something I hadn't been able to name for years. "I think we both needed to grow," I said. "But you left me to do it alone." Tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. I regret that more than anything. There was no dramatic climax to that conversation. No sudden transformation. But when we left the cafe, she didn't ask for another meeting. She just hugged me, softly, carefully, and said, "Whenever you want to talk, I'll be here." And for the first time, I believed her. I walked home slowly. The city felt brighter. Not because anything huge had changed, but because I had changed. I had faced the person who once made me feel invisible, and I had been seen. The next few months were calm. We exchanged occasional messages. No pressure. No expectations. Just gentle check-ins, like two people learning how to speak a new language. One evening, while folding laundry in my dorm, I got a message. "What's your favorite memory of us?" I sat down and thought about it. There were so many small ones. Her brushing my hair while humming softly. Sunday afternoons in the kitchen, baking burnt cookies and laughing about it. Her arms wrapped around me during thunderstorms. I replied, "That night you let me stay up late to watch the stars. You said they were ancient, but they still shine. Like people who hurt and still love." She replied with a single emoji, a heart, and nothing more. But that night, I slept better than I had in years. Graduation came fast. My aunt was there, of course, sitting in the front row with a giant grin and watery eyes. She brought flowers. My closest friends cheered. And then, just before the ceremony started, I noticed a familiar figure slipping quietly into the back row. My mother. She didn't wave. Didn't try to steal a moment. She just watched. Respectfully. Quietly. As if she finally understood that showing up meant more than making a scene. Afterward, she waited until I was free. When I walked toward her, she opened her arms without saying a word. I stepped in. The hug felt different than any before. Not like returning home, but like recognizing that home can be many things, and sometimes it needs to be rebuilt from scratch. We stood there for a long moment before she whispered, "I'm so proud of who you've become." "Me too," I replied. And I meant it. That night, my aunt, my friends, and even my mother shared a meal. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences, missteps. But there was also laughter. And peace. Sometimes, I still think about that girl who sat alone on the kitchen floor, waiting for a text that never came. I want to reach back and tell her that healing doesn't always come the way we expect. That people can change, but not always on our timeline. That sometimes we outgrow the love we once needed, and that's okay. Now, when people ask about my relationship with my mother, I don't give them a clean answer. Because there isn't one. It's complicated. Wounded. Mending. But most importantly, it's real. And real, I've learned, is enough. Finally understood that showing up meant more than making a scene.